give me an update. How's things been going? What's been happening?
Things are good, actually, really good. I signed a new contract like 10 days ago, almost 2 weeks ago. Um, it's our large package, so that was exciting. And it was the first time ever
Congratulations.
signing after Thanksgiving, which was also really exciting. And
Yeah.
as a result of it, and the couple small jobs I had over the summer, and the two I told you about, including the architecture firm that I met at a bar, and the travel agent that came through the website. uh, it's going to be my strongest year since I launched, so I'm just very excited about that. This The new account is in wellness, and the travel agent is in hospitality, so they're both right up my alley. The architect is a designer, obviously, so they all just kind of fit the bill. As far as our direct abilities go, with a more shallow learning curve, because um, like I sometimes speak with some leads who are, say, in nanotechnology, and they're a startup in nanotechnology, and I don't have any experience in nanotechnology, but I kind of understand it. And the whole purpose of my process is to learn about whatever we're doing. And one thing, it's interesting, like what what those prospects fear the most is not our process or even us. It's the potential, the possibility of them having to teach us their business. And I always say, I'm like, you're not going to be wasting your time talking to us all the time, telling us about your business. That's our job, to go learn about your business. Like, we'll talk to you once in a formal interview, and then we'll have a point of contact that is our point of contact. We're open access. They, per contract, should be open access, but we're not like up your butt. Tell us what this means. Tell us what that means. Tell us what this means. That's literally why we do the research. So, and it gives us an edge because it makes us really objective, because we're coming in as sort of newcomers, and we have a perspective that, someone close to the market or your business may not. Anyway, so like these conversations have been happening, but I'm very, very happy. I'm very happy with how the year is about to end. And I'm looking forward to next year. I think it's just going to get better and better.
I always find it kind of interesting when I'm talking to prospects and they're wanting to know what my experience in their industry is. And with the notion that, you know, well, if we work with a lot of companies in their industry, we will definitely be better than somebody that hasn't. And
Right.
I mean, in some ways, that might be the truth. In some ways, you may have tried a bunch of strategies and gotten to the point where you know a few things that work. You may understand what this, what the speak is, right? How to say things
The
and
jargon.
how people react and respond and stuff like that. I do think there's some value, though, to fresh perspectives, fresh ideas coming in, and looking at it differently. Because, the fact of the matter is, if you're a company and you're out there looking for somebody else to do marketing, you haven't been that successful with it so far, right? Or you wouldn't be looking. So, does it really matter overall? I don't think so.
I
Yeah.
don't think it does. I know where the fear is coming from, though. They just want to, it's not even that they want to know that we know about their industry. They want an example
Yeah.
of a success story of someone like them. That's what they
Yeah.
want to
True.
see. That's what they want. They're like, okay, so you've done the nanotech guys, for example, okay, you've done all these cool things for like this spa and this, this hotel and this whatever. And, but you've never worked in nanotechnology or like, B2G, business to government sectors and this and this. And we just want to see like a success story there. And I go, well, I can't give you that. I can tell you what we've done for these people. And that's the fear. I get it. Cause we're spending money. I mean, it's the same thing. I do the same thing. I did the same thing with you. I asked you if you'd worked with other creative agencies and with branding agencies like mine, just to get like a picture, because uh, I'm also the type who does my due diligence. If you give me a testimonial or I see a testimonial by somebody who's similar to me and has a similar business as mine, I will hit that person up and I'll be like, can you tell me about your experience with, with Monty or with Abound or whoever? And because of what we always talk about in these conversations we've had, credibility comes from the source. I don't care what you say. Like what you say,
Yeah.
I believe what you say. I have no reason to not believe you, but I need to be convinced. And if the sale is strong, we're spending money, so you wanna have a little bit of a proof of concept beforehand. And that's why I know our own weaknesses. Blackribbit's greatest weakness is his lack of case studies. Our greatest weakness is our lack of case studies. Right now, we are so well positioned finally, and it's taken the standard 5 years, but I have the pricing model is down. It's perfect. It's like competitive. It's scalable. It's on a scale. It starts low. It goes pretty high, but it's very chewable for anybody, someone on a budget or people who are just ready to go. And the model is sound. Our process is very strong. We have a good team behind us. We know what we're talking about. Uh, we're educated. We're and all that. And so when we talk, it's clear we know what we're talking about. And when I say we, I mean we. Like the team is good. They know what they're talking about, and they're good at what they do. But every time it comes down to show us the numbers, can we see some metrics? We don't have it. And I say I'm very open about that as I am, and I say we had to go through COVID. We're only 5 years old. Basically, 3 years was like dead. Um, 21 was a total bust. 22 was transformative. This year, we've seen some real growth, but metrics in branding by nature take at least a year for anything useful to come out. Like I can't give you any numbers that are useful. The only thing I can tell you is how internal processes and employee engagement and cultural alignment, these things have come come into existence as a result of the work that we've done and what we've delivered. The staff and the teams within our clients organizations are running with a lot more clarity. They have true purpose and direction. They know where they're going. They have a communication protocol. They know how to talk to each other. The language is clear now. So I can tell you all that, and that they're more efficient, they're more effective, and they're hitting their numbers, and their milestones, quicker and easier and more productively since we delivered. But I can't tell you how they're doing in the market because they're not in the market yet. So,
Yeah.
it's
So
interesting.
how are you overcoming that hurdle or that objection? Because you've got to, I mean, to your point, that's the one thing that a company that has a lot of history in, um, a particular expertise or an industry can typically do is show, well, here's our case studies of what we've done in the past. And today's success does not guarantee tomorrow's, right? But so you started in COVID. You're now, you've got a couple of clients that are keeping you busy, and that's fantastic. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Um, How are you overcoming that issue? Is it just a focus on the disciplines of and pointing out the problems that need to be solved by the particular prospects that you're talking with, and them just from a relationship standpoint getting to the point that they feel comfortable with you to say, yeah, we'll give you a shot, or what are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. You basically nailed it. Again, I do have some data that I can share, like what I just described, some like internal organizational stuff that's happening as a result of our deliverables and the strategies we delivered to our clients. And again, to your point, our oldest clients at this point are like a year old. We picked them up last year, and like for example, one of my star clients, we signed with them roughly this time last year, and we delivered in the spring, and then we moved to a consultant level, like we do, which is another rarity, to make sure that the program we delivered is actually being implemented and adopted. And it's been a year now, and the product that we set off to strategize and engage a go-to-market plan with is just now being launched. Like they were building it in the last 6 months, because that's what happens. You have to create the strategy first, and then design the thing that the strategy is informing. Otherwise, you do the thing that I always recommend against. You start designing, and then you're like, wait, what is even the point of this thing? And then you have to make changes, and you waste a whole bunch of time. So the way that I mitigate that challenge is by bringing up these stories that are true and exist. And then what you said, just asking the questions that reveal a very clear way of thinking about these issues that is interesting and exciting to the prospect, to the point where they go, oh, we didn't even think about that. Or, that's definitely something we need. And I love what I'm hearing. Or, to get them to get to the magic words where they say, okay, we can't wait to get started. So
Yeah,
that's,
yeah.
I don't want to be the one who says, okay, when do we start? I want them to say, okay, when do we start? And the goal is that. So I push the narrative to, just asking a lot of questions. And, and it's a two-way street. Like and one of my strategists talking to the prospect has to get excited about the project too. The chemistry has to be there in order to even nurture any sort of excitement. If the prospect, um, it's it's like any relationship. If we find that it's just not a good fit, it's pretty hard to fake that. And not to mention, if we're pitching like a 4 to 6 month contract here, I don't want to be dealing with consistent contention and awkwardness, because it's going to screw up the entire process anyway. Um, and if
Well,
it's
and it typically does not wind up being successful
That's
in
right.
the end.
Yeah. And if you're screwing up the process, you're screwing up the outcome, and screwing up the outcome
Yeah.
screws up everything. And they're not going to feel good about it. You're going to put out a crappy product. Like you're not going to feel good about it. And everyone feels like they wasted time and money. So that excitement really comes from both sides. And if if it's a cool product, if it's a cool client, the chemistry is good, and they're doing something awesome, then it gets easy. It's just easier, because you like each other, and it comes from a place of, okay, we like each other, we respect each other. Let's see. So then someone has to take a jump, and if we're speaking to an influencer, then they need to influence the decision maker, and then we meet with them, and hopefully the stars still align. It's what you always talk about. It's a warm buildup. It's not like, okay, we just met for 30 minutes, are we going to do this? like
Yeah. Yeah.
it this last one was, I had 4 meetings before we went to contract, over about 6 weeks. And it was one introductory, then like a more discovery sort of meeting, then meeting the team, and meeting the teams, and then okay, when do we get started? It was awesome.
Yeah, I have a strong belief that in the B2B space, it's know, like, and trust before business happens. And I have a I have a friend, and he's a brilliant guy, and he says you don't need to know the person or like the person or even trust the person to do business with them. You have to believe that they can solve a problem, and if they can solve the problem for you, then that's you know you go to the doctor. You don't have to know, like, or trust your doctor. And I'm and I get what he's saying, and on the same hand, I disagree with it. If I don't like my doctor, I'm finding a new one.
Yeah,
you
sure.
know. And if I don't trust my doctor, I'm definitely getting a second opinion. I'm going to
That
go with the opinion that I trust. And so knowing who you're dealing with, and I think what you're talking about there with the relationship standpoint, you've got to have rapport, and
yeah,
you've got to have a relationship. The um, if you want a long term um, relationship with the company that is going to trust you, and because marketing is not a black and white game. you know you've got specific strategies that honestly anybody can employ. Anybody can create an email campaign. Anybody can create a website. Anybody can do SEO, all this other kind of
yeah,
stuff. I mean, it doesn't matter what the strategy is. It's um, how well do you know the market, and can you create the messaging? And that's all that you're talking about, and all that you do in your business is most companies don't, especially if they're startup or smaller companies, don't really know how to communicate their unique value position, the
right.
problem that they solve. They don't understand who they should be communicating that to. And that has to be solved for anybody. I think AI really has leveled the playing field for a lot of marketing companies. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I think it's both. But um, how are you incorporating AI with anything that you're doing when, like, let's say the nanotech company? Are you
Yeah,
gonna?
well, we leverage it to just create, let's just say, speed up creating messaging and copy and just copy, just writing. But the thing is, uh, and I've stood by this since last year, since the beginning of the year. Until we do the research, develop the strategy, then the prompts are generic. Like
Yeah,
I need to have a strategy based on data that makes sense for the audience we're trying to reach, for the problems we're trying to solve, for the challenges we're trying to overcome, in order to properly, or at least usefully or effectively, prompt an AI tool, either whoever, Chat GPT, Claude, whatever. And without that, then the automation is still way too generic. And the point is, even it doesn't matter how robust the the system is, the AI is, if you're not giving it the right prompts anyway, it's always going to spit
yeah,
out something generic. So the point is, you need to know what you're trying to what you're trying to achieve, and then AI is very useful. And in that capacity, it's not replacing anybody, because you still
yeah,
have to, your why is not going to come from an AI. It's just not.
yeah. That's
Um,
true.
you have to figure it out from an emotive place. And that's difficult to do with AI. Well, right now, anyway.
What do you feel like you're the best at as a company?
Oh, our strength is 100% in our process. Um, it's really the A, B, C, D. It's the four phase. Do this before you do this, before you do that. And one thing I'm personally good at is just from my life experiences and personality and how I've evolved over time um, is my own intuition, is just being able to read the words, to hear the words not said. And this is how we train our people who do the research and consolidate the research and analyze the responses and our insights and so on, because it's really uncovering emotive messaging is coming from how something is interpreted, and that interpretation is subjective, uh, but it's interpreting something real. It's interpreting an objective response. So that in itself is, that's where like the art happens, the creativity happens, right? You have the design process, the strategic process that's very sort of one, two, three, four. It's programmatic, but then you have, how do you put the emotion into that? That's where the art comes in and the creativity comes in. That's why copywriters are magic, because they know how to take data and dry information and spin it into something that means the same thing. It's just said in a way that's magical and, you know, is tactile and is resident and is visceral and all that. And so we're good at that. Our team does a phenomenal job at one, following process, which just brightens everybody's uh, minds and eyes when the clients see the thing coming into shape, from starting from an interview to developing the model and the framework and everything. That's when people get excited, and that really is our strength. I say that in, you know, a lot of meetings. I say our greatest strength is our process.
So when you are communicating, let's say you're starting your conversation. Let's say I'm a new prospect. What's how are you communicating that? What's your unique value position? Like if I'm, let's say I don't know what you want me to be, hotel owner. Let's say I own 5 hotels. Um, we sat down for lunch. What problem are you solving for me, and how are you talking through that process as your guys' strength and what it will bring to me?
I always begin with understanding a, you know, future desired state. Like where it really is the, it's 3 years from now, we're enjoying a coffee or a beer, and you know, you're really happy with what's happened over the last 3 years. What has made you so happy? And if you can put yourself in that future position as the prospect, one, it means you have vision. Two, it means you can think backwards from there. And then together we go backwards. Okay, so what happened that got you to this place? Is that, you know, employee engagement? Is it more staff? Is it expansion to new locations? Is it, um, you know, more revenue? You know, is it, what is it that caused all these milestones to take place to get us to this moment in time 3 years from now? And that in itself just reveals a lot right off the bat, because you're just going backwards. You're not saying, okay, you know, we just have a deliverable that's a brand book and it's a logo and this and that, because it's not. It could be. And something that I always insist on, for example, is to do the research phase, the first phase, as a separate agreement, because it's what's designed to create the scope of work. Without the research and the insights, we don't really know what it is we need to solve. all kind of speculating here. And until that becomes clear, I'm not going to recommend anything about strategy, anything about design, anything about go to market plans. I'm just not going to do it. I refuse, because I need to make sure, that we're all on the same page in terms of the issues and challenges we're trying to solve here. And the research itself doesn't show only one strategic option either. We uncover a whole bunch of stuff by asking the right questions, because in that conversation you just referred to, the first conversation, we're developing the initial scope that will guide our questions in the first place. So we're not asking useless questions when we're doing the research phase, so that the report that we deliver has real insights regarding the original problems that we identified that formulated the original questions. Like, another fear a lot of clients have or customers have is, they're like, so are you just going to deliver a 120-page document with a whole bunch of information that we don't know how to use? And I say no, because that happens often. But with us, we go in there asking the right questions with the right intentions. And then that results in a whole bunch of options. Okay, this is the most feasible. This is the least expensive. This is going to take the longest. This is going to take the shortest amount of time, and so on. So that's how we begin that.
I like that approach of saying, let's envision 3 years down the road. What's that look like for you? If they haven't really thought about that, or if they haven't, put that kind of effort into it, you kind of know where you're at, with them and where you need to start. Yeah. But imagining, I really do like that approach, because if you're sitting down and you're saying, picture yourself at the end of next year, you're now successful. What does that mean? Yeah. Right? What's that mean for you? Is it new business? Is it new customers? Is it, to your point, have you brought on new employees? Are you living a life of luxury? What's success to you?
Totally. And the more specific,
and then working backwards from there.
Yeah. And the more specific it is, the better. And it can include, like, I have more time off. I'm working less. I can delegate more, or whatever. And like, the more specific it is, the company's making 100 million a year by year 3 from now, or it's making 10 million a year. Like, so how do you break that down? How much are you making today, so that we can understand what to beef up to make 5 million by next year, 7 million the year after that, and 10 million by year 3. Because it's not going to be 10 million next year; it's going to be in 3 years. So yeah, it's a really just a sort of mapped out way of figuring out what it is you're even here to do.
Yeah, the past couple of days I spent with a client. It's the first time. So, company has been around for quite a while, but it's the first time that they took their entire leadership off site, went 3 hours away to a resort to do some strategic strategy sessions for their next year and 3 years ahead. Right, 3-year outlook with a focus on 2024. They asked me to come in and lead that, and they had scheduled 2 hours to do a SWOT analysis. Well, I had done a SWOT analysis just a couple of months ago, so they thought, okay, 2 hours just to do that. And I thought, you're probably going to need more time, but let's see how it goes. Wound up spending about 4 hours on their SWOT analysis.
Wow.
And the approach of sitting down with somebody and saying, tell me what success looks like for you in a year, is basically giving you the opportunity to now come back and do that strategic planning with them, because so much of strategic planning centers around your communication and your marketing. And this particular company, identified collectively as a group that communication, both internally and externally, was one of their primary problems, one of their primary weaknesses, I should say. And when we got to the marketing point, I said, what's your unique value position? How do you separate yourself from all of your competition? And the owner, to his credit, he said, what I want it to be is right now our greatest weakness, and it's communication. And I said, let's make it your unique value position. And over the next 12 months, right, what you have to do to turn your greatest weakness into your greatest strength, and so much so that it becomes your unique value position. And then you just look at 12 months and you break that down into a quarterly, monthly, daily thing that you focus on over that course of time, so that this time next year we sit down and you say, our company communicates like no other company in this industry, both internally and to our customers. And so you've got a great approach in that. Is that how you won these last 2 clients?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it certainly has to do with it because it paints a picture in a way that wasn't thought of before. And not only that, it offers KPIs and measurable milestones when you think about it like that. So when you say, okay, what does success look like to you? Let's put a value behind that, right? And so that you're working up to something. And by working up to something, you're setting goals and you're setting tactical goals. Your strategy is this long-term thing, and then you're setting tactical goals to get to that point. And so when I explain it like that, everything starts becoming clear. And not only that, I have I have this philosophy where I say, I don't know if it's unique to me, but people like hearing it. I say, even if you don't have an exit planned in your future, if you don't see yourself selling your company, or that was never even on your mind or anything, always build as if you're going to exit, as if you're going to sell your company.
Yeah.
Because if you do that, then you're consistently covering all your bases. Because you don't know what's going to happen in 5 years. If you build it as if you're going to sell it, then you're going to be looking at your internal protocols, your communication protocols, your legal structure, your financial structure. You're going to look at all the facets of your company, including your brand equity, your communication plans, and so on. And as such, you will inherently grow and consistently build value. So that part of the conversation ties into the future desired state. Then between those two sides of that coin, well, people get excited because they can start visualizing this amazing success and this amazing company ahead of them, where I actually verbalize where the market's going to be fighting to get on board with you. They're going to be bidding on you regardless of market value.
Yeah, another thing that does is, when you focus on that, is it makes your client is actually the person that's the decision maker doing the job, and your responsibility is to make them happy, right?
Yeah.
And the only way you can make that person happy is to understand what their expectations for you are, right? It's the same as like parent to child relationships, if you would, almost.
Mm-hmm.
If the parent doesn't properly communicate, hey, these are my expectations for you, this is what I want you to do, if you accomplish that, we're good. And if you don't, we're not. When you set it up that way, and so many marketing companies are and marketing people are so focused on the disciplines, right? They're so focused on, we need email, and we need social media, and we need all these, and it's like, I'm at some point going to collectively come back to you with some, virtual ROI that says that I've been successful, right? Without really understanding, okay, what is success to you? You start with that at the beginning and say, define it for me, and then we'll back our way into it. You can't fail under that scenario. I mean, you can, but that's only if you're not meeting the expectations, right? But I mean,
Right.
if you understand clearly what they are and you meet them, you can't fail. So, how do you define, um, how do you set the expectations and then fold those into the individual strategies or channels that you're then implementing?
We so it falls in line with the same narrative. So with the future desired state, we break that down into phases. So again, if we say in 3 years you want this, that means in 6 months you want this. We want to be in this place in 6 months because we can see 3 years from now, but in order to get there, we need to break that down into more chewable milestones. So, in our case, we will say, let's start the research. And then from the research, we develop more milestones out of our insights. What needs to happen per the current state of the market, the current state of the brand, the current state of the organization, and so on. And we find, again, this SWOT analysis thing, like we find things that are working really well. Find things that aren't working at all. We find redundancies that are just wasting time and space, and so on. And then our goals are sort of fleshed out there. That could include leveraging certain opportunities that exist that are easy to grasp or grab onto to start developing a strategy around that will then feed into the company's current strengths that they're already good at. So it takes um, let me rephrase. One thing that we really try to lean into is leveraging an organization's strengths. So it costs less to actually get off the ground. Like if you're already doing something and you're good at it, do more of that thing if it's actually producing results. Um, and so in terms of uh, creating solutions to these problems and being able to set those expectations, it's very boring, but basically we set a calendar with milestones and a timeline, and we say we're going to hit this mark at this time, and it's all rooted in analytics and research. And because we're a design thinking company, we're a design company, um, we do these iterations. So we do the research, then we offer recommendations, then we offer the strategies, and then we implement what we strategize. And then we do it again. We go do the research again. We test what we already did. We see how that's faring, and then we re-implement, and so on and so on and so on. And the creativity comes from iterating and um, interpreting the data, and the analytics come from the data, from doing the research and so on. So it's just this cycle that continuously goes and consistently sets expectations, consistently hits milestones, just over and over and over again.
So it's kind of like split testing. You
Yeah,
kind of
it's kind of like
launch it out there, launch it again, and kind of see which one's playing off or which one's doing well. How do we revamp to improve? And then it's a continual improvement process, I should say.
that's exactly what it is. And Monty, that was an example. Like if I do a ground up, first phase finite deliverable. An example is a branding program, like developing a clarity of purpose with a clear mission, with a clear vision, with a clear messaging, a clear story, clear character of brand character, clear positioning, how the values separate this organization from the rest of the market, and how that's going to feed their recruitment process, their how that's going to define their employee value proposition, and connect it to their customer value proposition, and so on and so on. That in itself is the first phase of what you and I just described. And then you deliver that and you start running the program. And as you run the program, you monitor the program and you see how it's faring. You see how the different facets are being picked up, if it's being adopted by the employees, by the organization itself. If there are any points of friction, why do those points of friction exist? If it's seamless, fantastic. Let's push it harder. And that whole thing, let's say phase one, could potentially take 6 months, or it could take 6 weeks. It just depends on the scope and the amount of um, stones we have to turn over, and how old the company is, how big the company is, if it's been in the market, if it's new to the market. All of these dependencies affect the timeline and the cycles.
How much do you feel um, companies should invest in marketing?
uh, Man,
And I'm talking about from a budget standpoint. You know, um, I know it goes all over the board,
yeah.
but you're working with some larger, some smaller clients. We all do. Uh, People take different approaches, but when you're how do you advise clients they should look at their spend?
Man, it's just such not a trivial question. So you know, there, there's like a baseline response to that, which I think is fair. I think it's fair, and I stand by it. It's really a percentage of your annual, either your annual revenue or your target revenue. So one could argue that, if the rule of thumb is to, if you're a B2B, then the rule of thumb is to spend 3 to 5% of your annual revenue on branding alone. On marketing specifically, which is go to market tactics and events and activities, for a B2B is about 10 to 15, maybe 10% of your annual revenue. Um, and so per that, you can argue that if you haven't gone to market yet, you could say that 10% of your projected revenue should go to marketing, because the math is basically the same. But you could argue that. And then if you want to be conservative, you just lower it. You say, okay, if our annual revenue, if our projected annual revenue is $1 million, so you're saying I should spend $100,000 on marketing. And the answer is yes. That's what I'm saying. This year, you should spend $100,000 on marketing if you want to hit $1 million in revenue. And so, by that rule of thumb, again, just by doing simple math, you could argue that if you spend $50,000, you'll make $500,000. Or like, if 5% will get you $1 million, then it's 50 grand will get you $1 million. But then, that's like the top level response. Um, because you also can't start measuring certain things right off the bat. You need to spend money to get the product, to get the program, to put it into place, and then it'll take you another year just to see it live in the market.
So let's break that down a little bit. So you're saying 3 to 5% on branding, and then another 10% on go to market strategies. So let's talk through, from your standpoint, how do you define that 3 to 5% on branding? What are those branding activities?
So that's a great question. So branding is specifically developing strategy. So, for example, that could house anything from developing your narrative, your messaging, nurturing your narrative, your messaging, uh, defining, formalizing your mission, vision, values, your brand pillars, basically the spirits that guide your communications. It's all in all its capacity. That could also house your visual identity, which includes the look and feel, your logos, your typefaces, your brand architecture, how the hierarchy of your organization is set up, because all of these things drive the marketing, and the marketing is the tactics. Marketing is how you communicate all that stuff to the market, and that's why branding is always people don't like spending the money on the branding part, because it's all this preparation to go to market. Nothing is actually used yet. You're developing the program. And again, that can take, depending on who you talk to, it can take anywhere from a few weeks to a few months. And how fast you can go about it, how much you're willing to cut. And if you're like a tiny 3-person company versus 5,000 person company, um,
Yeah.
it just depends. And that's why, to your point, it's the budget is like all across the board. And you could get, I can make this really simple. You can get your brand off the ground with a decent program, meaning a brand book with a good style guide, with good messaging guidelines, with good narrative, with a useful story and brand character that's going to drive all your marketing. You can get it off a good one that's like worth it is let's say 10 grand, 10 to $15,000. I think anything below that, you might get like a logo and a style guide out of it, but your narrative is missing. Or like the narrative is created through speculation and just the founder's vision, for example, without any real market research. Which you can do that. There's nothing really against that. It's just it's
Yeah.
less formal, and you'll probably revisit the process down the road.
So that 3 to 5% includes a lot of the brand vision and strategy, you're saying.
Correct.
So, and a lot of the go to market strategies, if you would,
Yeah.
that you're going to define. That includes your messaging, yeah. And there's a lot of research involved in that. So that 3 to 5% of your budget, um, you know, to your point, if you wanted to make $1 million, 3 to 5% of that you need to apply to your overall strategy, your
Yeah.
image, so on and so forth. So then you're saying another 10% on the specific go to market strategies. That can be anything. Um, you know, is there, are there a few things that are absolutes for people? Like you're saying, your go to market strategy always needs to include these things.
Well, it always needs to include your narrative. It needs to include, uh, your positioning as an organization. So, um, for example, if Monty is going to do business with someone, you show up as Monty. You don't put on a mask.
Yeah.
And Monty is your strategy. That's your branding. So that's what needs to exist every time in all your marketing, whether it's in an email or a phone call. In a phone call, it's Monty talking in Monty's voice, in Monty's delivery, in Monty's tone, upholding your values and how you approach life and business in general. And that comes through every time. It's the same thing in marketing. If your marketing looks different in every channel, if it sounds different in every channel, if it's, if it feels different or whatever, then there's discrepancy. Then the market gets confused. Then they don't know what you're doing, what you're selling, who you are, what you're all about. And that just gets lost. So
Yeah. You know, Sorry, go ahead. I'll let you
No,
finish.
it's literally the things that scare people. It's the intangibles that need to always be included. So it sounds weird saying that because it's the stuff you can't see that needs to be in the thing you can see.
Yeah, it's totally the truth. You know, what one of the things that I've found with a lot of companies that I work with is that over time, that brand message, that brand strategy gets disjointed across channel,
Yeah.
right? You may be you may have things out here on Facebook, and all of a sudden you haven't used Facebook in a while, and you've made some brand strategy adjustments, and now you've made those adjustments on LinkedIn and Twitter and stuff like that, and you're doing that. But over here on Facebook, you're saying something totally different. It's like, what happened there? And or your website, you know, you're out there on social media and you're communicating all these new exciting things and everything else, and your website's just a
Yeah.
dog's butt over here, you know, waving around. That's not cohesive with what we're saying over here. And so often it's figuring out, all right, well, you know, based on, let's look a year ahead, here's where you want to be. Now here's the mess that you've got behind you that needs to be cleaned up,
Yeah.
right? And so often it's not not everybody's starting from fresh, right? I mean,
Right.
you've got like a bunch of trash out here
Yeah.
that you now have to revamp, and that increases the amount of time that it takes just to get you kind of back to even. You know what I'm
Totally.
saying?
Totally. Yeah. And that in itself is scary. It's scary because it just takes time and it does take money. And it's the thing that again, tacticians hate this because they're like, nothing is happening while we're doing this. And it's like, well, a lot is happening. You're cleaning house in order to release useful tactics. And instead of doing this for 5 years and seeing no results, do this for 6 months and then get into it with a fresh start, with a fresh outlook, with a clear outlook. And then the next year and a half is going to be awesome.
Yeah, totally. You got any nightmare stories?
Nightmare stories. Man, something just off the top. Hmm. Trying to think like nightmare stories. No, you know what?
My
Honestly, I
nightmares.
haven't had a really bad experience with a customer in quite a while, which is great. Knock on wood. Uh, but
Let me pull one out of the tank from a long time ago that I'll share with you. You know at one point in my career I was a freelance designer, right? And I met with this solopreneur. I don't even remember what his business was, to be honest with you. Um, but he wanted a logo, and he wanted a quote unquote attack a hummingbird
okay,
logo. What the heck is that?
attack a hummingbird. That's what it said.
Attack hummingbird. He wanted the
Oh, an
hummingbird
attack hummingbird,
to look like it's
like
in
a jet.
attack mode. Yeah, because hummingbirds are so fierce. But but so I launched into discovery, if you would, trying to figure out, all right, what would an attack hummingbird? And of course, you get these people who have something in their mind.
Yeah,
They've got something envisioned, and they've got literally no ability to communicate what their vision is. I mean, just none at all. They spit out random words. Attack hummingbird. That like mean nothing, but they can't describe to you what it is. So you go through all these efforts of going out and finding different images. How about this? How about that? How about this? Would this represent what you have? Would this be attack hummingbird? And you're using other hummingbirds, and you're using other pictures of birds, angry birds, and stuff like that. No, 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 no. And you wind up spending so much blasted time just trying to get inside their brains. It's one of those examples where you can never be successful
Mm-hmm.
because they can't define for you what success is, right? And so I went through round after round of logos. Never was able to find him anything. He kept, wanting me to do different things. He eventually sent me this picture of some random bluebird on a really cold day, and it was sitting on a pole, and it was all, tucked in, feathers out, and it looked angry, somehow, like I'm pissed off. It's so cold out here, and I'm like, okay, well, why don't you just use that bird if you want? Does it have to be a hummingbird? And what it taught me right there in that was, if I ever have a client who can't express what success is, who can't define what success is and what I will do for them to achieve that success, that is the definition of a bad client.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And don't work for that client.
Right. Yeah, that's a good screening process. Yeah, absolutely. You made me think of it was also a logo project. That's so funny. I worked on, and this was before I used to do this particular process that I employ at Blackribbit. It was years ago. And we basically same thing, like speaking to the client, what is your vision? Like, what are you trying to accomplish here, and so on. And then 6 months of work on this logo. This was a very big project, and it was thrown in the garbage after 6 months. And
Oh,
he went with
no.
something that was from his family crest or whatever. And
That's the way it always is.
yeah,
Anytime you get clients like that, you'll do the most magnificent artwork and design
yeah,
and everything else. And in the end, they'll use something that their 7th grade kids scratched out
yeah,
that they think is just amazing, that is trash.
yeah. It was one of those, like, I'd already sort of grown into a designer, so I didn't take it personally, but I was like, man, that was a lot of work you just threw away. And
Oh,
still got paid, and but it was just one of the. And then my colleague goes, he's like, well, at least you have a ridiculously long portfolio piece now. And I said, that's true.
silver linings.
It was funny, man. It was so funny. But
Yeah.
oh well, but that's why now I always argue. I say, if you do this process where you do research, strategy, then design, visuals, then the potential for argument reduces every step of the way, because now it's something is informing something, which is informing something else, which is informing something else. And to the point where I've worked with clients who come in with a logo before we even do the research. They're like, we already have an idea, blah, blah, blah. And I say, I'm happy to look at it, but I'm going to tell you right now, there's a chance we'll use it as is. There's also a chance we'll scrap it completely, and you won't be happy with that when we develop the strategy, because you'll see that it just doesn't fit anymore. And they go, oh, okay, yeah, I like that. And then I say, okay, and I mean it. There's no guarantee that we won't use it, but let's just do the work and see what happens. And when we get to that point, then I guarantee 9 out of 10 times you're like, man, this doesn't work anymore. It's like, yeah,
Totally. At some level, I almost feel like a counselor.
oh yeah, totally.
when working with clients, um, kind of using that approach, right? Because you really have to get into the mind of somebody. And because, for the fact of the matter is, we've all got different personalities,
Yeah.
right? I mean, there's a number of specific personalities. You know, how we are is always minutely different from anybody else. How we think is usually different from anybody else. And when you are a business leader, solopreneur, whatever, uh, you think about a lot of things. I mean, I think back to the owner of this company that I just did the strategy for. I mean, the guy has so many things on his plate. He just simply doesn't have time
Yeah.
to sit down and think strategically from a standpoint of let me look a year ahead, and from a marketing standpoint, what does that mean? What do I need to do? What do I need to accomplish? And yet it's all in there. It's all there. They just don't know how to get it out. And so I think that's one of the greatest values, if you could create a unique value position around that, right? I will get out of your head what is there that you don't know how to get out. I wish
Yeah.
I could kind of make that my my UVP, because
Yeah, that's cool.
a lot of people think they can do that, but they don't, right? And so I think what you're telling me, why you're successful with clients, and I remember you were telling me, one of your greatest successes was to make one of your clients cry.
Yeah. Yeah.
In a
That
good
just
way,
happened
because you were
again a few
able to
weeks
pull
ago.
that out. It happened again?
Yeah, a few weeks ago.
Tell me about it. What
That was
happened?
during the research phase. It was amazing. Just from what we found, um, certain findings that reinforced, what she believed about herself and so on, and what her husband believed about her, and just all this uplifting reinforcement, um, just made her feel just she was overwhelmed. And that was the first time that ever happened in the research phase. It was just delivering data. It was incredible. It's like it's honestly such a we're flushed every time that happens. It's just an amazing experience.
That's really cool. Really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, is that kind of why you got into marketing?
To make people cry.
to to see that kind of emotional
Yeah.
response
Yeah.
to something that you can deliver for somebody.
Yeah, it definitely has a lot to do with it, and specifically the branding side, which is the prerequisite to marketing, and so or developing strategy and narrative and so on, and because it's the part that's yeah, it's so emotionally driven, and being able to get at that and identify it in a way that, to your point, is showing someone what they weren't even able to express is kind of magical. And I realized I have that ability early on when I was a senior graphic designer, like almost 12 years ago or 10, I don't remember. It's like 12 years ago. And the it was the first time that a client said about me that he was able to see something that I didn't know I wanted. Um, through her descriptions of what she was for and so on. Actually, what was cool was that I actually delivered exactly what she described, and then I was like, "So I have this, but when you were talking, I envisioned something completely different." And I showed her that, and she was like, "Holy shit!" Like I had no idea. She's like, "That you just nailed it. I didn't even." think that's what it was, but that's what it is. And I was like, and that was the moment that I felt that for the first time. And I wanted to recreate that feeling over and over and over and over again, because it's just exciting and so humbling every single time to be in that situation, to be able to share that moment with somebody and with a client where you just get them, and they say that the compliment we get, that Blackribbit always gets, is I've never felt so heard, like, ever. so that's just a
Yeah,
beautiful thing to hear. I can't think of a better compliment, honestly.
that's absolutely the truth. I mean, um, and that is the sign, if you ask me, that is one of the signs of an exceptional marketer.
Yeah,
Somebody that can really listen more than they are talking. And, you know, um, it's also leadership, if you ask me. I mean,
yeah,
because the best leaders are always the best listeners.
yeah,
And they're listening to respond, not waiting to talk. And that's the best marketers too. Listen, hear what the problems are, and then respond. Don't just wait to get a message out there. Don't just throw out, what you think it should be because you think you're a quote unquote marketer.
yeah.
So, yeah, well done. Well done. Well, I'm
Thank you.
excited for these new clients of yours. I want to definitely keep me posted and how it
Absolutely.
goes with them. And let's make sure we get some of your stories out there. Quite honestly, I don't know. I mean, yeah, the white papers or case studies, are great to show what somebody's results are after the fact. But I think the stories that you have in that I'm a listener and we get to the strategies and we pull out the things that matter, and that create real experiences
Yeah,
for our clients and stuff like that. Those are unique.
yeah,
And I think if you're leading with those, with prospects and stuff like that, um, I think more people are interested in that, honestly, than the end result. Because I think if you are able to accomplish that, then the end result should be mostly automatic, right?
right.
You can't help but to grow. You can't help but to do better.
Yeah,
And everybody will feel that, in the end. And then once you're able, I talk to Isaac and my team about that all the time, you know. Yeah, in 6 months, in a year down the road, we're going to have a bunch of numbers to throw at people. And a bunch of numbers will look attractive. Oh, we took a client from 1 million to 2 million or whatever. But does that mean you're going to do it for them? No, not necessarily. Um, but when you can share stories like what you're sharing right now and saying, we look at the end, then we pull out what needs to be pulled out of your mind and help craft and create that message that matters to you. If it matters to you, it's going to matter to your client. And then we weave that throughout across your channels and create the strategies around that. You can't help but grow. I think that's almost more valuable and more of what somebody needs to see than, yeah, I did this for somebody else.
sure. Yeah, the case studies are reinforcement, honestly. Um, it's just and it's something I wouldn't even show until they asked.
Yeah,
I just
totally.
I like to have them for that moment, because you're also, we often talk to numbers people. Like, they know they need this, but they want to see the numbers. So it just depends. Again, I agree. I don't think it replaces this at all, but I think it's a good supplement to have. It's always a useful
Mhm.
reinforcement.
Well, this has been awesome.
Yeah, it was awesome. Thank you.
I appreciate the conversation.